Welcome back to American Arms Channel, guys and girls. And today I'm back at the pattern board, and this time we're taking a look at 20 gauge shells out of the excellent Stoeger M3020. Everything I put in front of the camera is excellent. Have you ever noticed that? It's because I try not to buy junk. Anyways, guys, a little bit of a arrogance there, but I really do try and put stuff in front of the camera that is good. I don't feel it's worth the time to review something that's not, and we tend to do our research before we buy anything in my family. We like to buy once, cry once, and although this is a value price 20 gauge semi-automatic shotgun, it is an excellent one at that. We've got a couple parts series going on with it. This will kind of serve as one of the parts, but we will discuss it and do a final review at some point. Got a little bit of traffic, a little bit of wind today, so please bear with that if you hear it in the background. But today, the three loadings that we're going to be taking a look at are all going to be number 2 shot, and are all going to be clocked out at 7/8 of an ounce as far as shot weight. We're going to start off with one of the most economical options, the Winchester Super X. Again, 7/8 of an ounce, it's number 2 shot. Its advertised velocity is 1,500 feet per second. And that is a fairly common load. You can find it at Walmart, you can find it at Rural King, Bombgars, Tractor Supply Co. Actually, they don't sell ammo anymore, do they? They haven't for a long time. But any similar sort of tractor feed store probably carries Winchester. I know out in Nebraska it was Bombgars. Here in Virginia it's Rural King. You know, Walmart, any sort of big box store, absolutely you'll find it at Cabela's, Bass Pro, Shields. Take your choosing. Local sporting goods stores probably have Super X, so it's the most accessible, typically the most affordable, and just really a great shell to get a data point on. Most common, you're going to find it in number 2s, and you're going to find it in number 4s. Today we're doing 2s only. Next shell, more of a premium steel shell. We're going to be taking a look at hevi-shot's hevi-steel. Now, I'm a huge fan of this in 12 gauge, 3-inch, and 3.5 inch. It does a really great job for me all season long. Just switch up shot sizes really to adjust to what you need to get done, and as far as the birds that you're chasing. But this one is actually only at 1,400 feet per second. A bit slower, but I've killed plenty of birds with 1,400 FPS shells. I've done it with Remingtons, Kents, Winchesters, you know, just on and on and on. A lot of it was with old 2 3/4 inch stuff. Federals, old 2 3/4 inch, 1 1/4, 1 1/8 loads at 1,400. Done a good job for me before. You just got to know its limitations. So we'll find out if maybe the slower speed will give us a better pattern. And finally, we've got the Kent Precision Steel, their fast steel, as they call it. And this one's clocked out at 1,550 as far as what's on the box. So expecting the heaviest recoil out of this, and as well as probably maybe a little bit more sparse pattern because of increased speed. Who knows? 20 bores can be a lot different. Typically they have really good patterns, but that's usually with the moderate lead shot sizes. We honestly don't have a lot of experience seeing how this is our only 20 gauge in the household. We've got a number of 12s, number of 12 gauge duck guns especially, but none in 20. So this is the only one. So sample size of 1, you got to remember. But today we're going to be taking a look at 15 yards and at 30 yards. So to give us a good idea of what it might do up close, it might do it afar. Not trying to spend a whole lot of time today or a whole lot of ammo on this, just trying to find out, give us an idea of what our limitations are, what we can expect out of this shotgun with a factory modified choke, and see what happens. So that's enough yammering from me. Let's take a look at what this Stoeger with a modified choke can do with these 3 loadings at 15 and 30 yards, and see maybe what kind of conclusions we can draw from it. Is this a good option with number 2s for duck season? Let's find out. Well, as we can see, guys, the 15-yard target is fairly sparse for what we expect out of number 2 loads, but you have to remember this is only 7/8 of an ounce. So first shot of the day looks pretty good. fairly tight out of the modified choke. If a bird gets inside of that, it only takes a couple pellets, and you can see there that we've got some fairly decent sized holes. It's not terribly even, but still a dead bird. I think we're going to see a lot of dispersion at 30 yards with this particular load. We've got a few instances you can see of kind of having a trifecta. There's this set of flyers way over here, some oddballs here and there, but most of the groups right here, those lines are roughly at 25 to 30 inches. They're just kind of marked. This just give you a good idea of what we're looking at. Gun does seem to pattern just a touch high. We'll see if that continues on as we move out in distance, as well as change loads. So that was the Winchester at 15 yards. Let's take a look at what it'll do at 30. All right, guys, this is again our Winchester load at 30 yards. We see quite a bit more dispersion out of the modified choke. Really, for pattern size, it's a little open for a modified with number 2s at this distance. But that's also comparing it to what's most commonly used in a 12 gauge. And number 2s are going to be a pretty good standby from mid to late October all the way through the end of the season for most people across most of the country. If you ask what the most common duck load sold is, it's probably a 3-inch in 12 or 20 in number 2s. If we wanted to see this improved, we definitely would want to go to a number 4 shot, and then we start getting into lethality issues at 30 plus yards. But if you're using these smaller shot sizes, you're probably not taking those longer shots. And if you're using a 20 gauge especially, you're probably not looking at trying to take 40 yard and 45 yard shots consistently with a steel load. So this is still within the realm of possibility. And if you're hunting over a puddle, running an improved cylinder or modified choke from 50 to 30 yards, and you want to use some of the cheapest shells out there, this Winchester Super X 7/8 ounce at 1500 feet per second looks like it'll do the job for you. All right, now let's switch it up and let's go to a little bit more premium option. Let's go to the hevi-shot 7/8 ounce. This time we're going to drop 100 feet per second in load. Maybe that'll help us on our pattern, which, if enough pellets hit, will definitely increase our lethality. So let's check it out and see what happens. All right, guys, well, comparing that to our 15-yard Winchester load, it looks like we brought the impact down a little bit. That could be me, that could be the gun, but we seem to have a much more even spread now, and a much more lethal spread at that. Obviously a terrible representation of a duck, but definitely gives us a rough idea of what we'd be looking at if we centered up a duck in our pattern. Absolutely dead. In fact, I think you would definitely want to open that up a bit if you're only going to be shooting out to 25 yards. Maybe even put an improved cylinder in the 20 gauge there. But definitely got a good pattern. If a duck flies into it, or you get the duck in it with good lead, man, that's going to be one dead bird. So looks like the hevi-shot's doing really well. Slowing it down just 100 feet per second might be the trick on this this gun and this pellet size. We'll have to compare at some point with number 4s, but for consistency's sake, we're going to stick with the number 2s. All right, we're going to do the same load, and we're going to do it at 30 yards. Let's see what happens. Well, it's kind of opened up quite a bit more than I expected, and we've definitely got some huge holes in that pattern. Still very capable of killing a duck, obviously, but man, the 30 yards for the 20 gauge with this hevi-steel does not look that great. If we think back to what we did at 30 yards with the Winchester, we might have actually had a slightly better pattern. We will we'll see what happens when we decrease the shot size and get a better pellet count with the same load weight, but which of course should improve pattern a little bit. But yeah, there's some big holes there. So if you're wondering why at 20 yards you've been using hevi-shot, or excuse me, hevi-steel with their 3-inch 20 gauge load, and it just hasn't brought the birds down consistently, this might be why. This is one shell though, so consider that sample size. But we'll take a second look if we feel it warrants it with the final offering. So now we're going to go to Kent at 15 yards. Let's see what their steel shot can do. Number 2s again, but we're going to be 150 feet per second than the hevi-steel, 50 feet per second than the Winchester offering. So the fastest offering we have out here today. Let's see if it does anything for us. Well, at 15 yards, it looks like our patterns are fairly consistent, and this looks like it's just as good and tight as the hevi-steel was at 15 yards. We'll see what happens at 30. One point though, and this is fresh, it's still warm, that just ejected out of the gun, guys. Squashed in this shape, I haven't done anything to it, and with a split. Look at that. So one thing I am doing is I am looking at these shells every time we fire one, but unfortunately, I have not seen this for the first time, or excuse me, this is not the first time I've seen this with Kent offerings. Their plastics for their hulls seem to be brittle or too soft. I think they honestly have a lot of consistency issues when it comes to their hulls and their hull bases here, the actual steel or tin or aluminum portion, whatever they make it out of. This being brass wash steel. Yeah, these, unfortunately, I think Kent's got a problem with the quality of shot shell that they're outputting. It seems to be doing what it needs to. Of course, they don't have the chronograph out right now, but it looks like the faster speed has not adversely affected the patterning at 15 yards. Again, very, very dead duck. Expect a number 4 shot that to improve and even out even better. But number 2 pellet's pretty big for a 20 bore. Let's see what it can do at 30 yards. All right, guys, so 30 yards, you saw it hit. Man, the dispersion seems to be a little bit better with this Kent loading, sample size of 1. And just for your information, this time we did not have any hull splitting, although we did have a little bit of squashing, it seems, which I'm not seeing out of the Winchester or the hevi-steel hulls. So actually right there, we can kind of see a crease forming. Definitely, yep. So that's wanting to split right down the center line there. So definitely not something you're going to want to try and reload. That hull is way too brittle. But looks like the pattern's decent. Compared to what we're seeing, I mean, at 30 yards, number 2s out of a 20 gauge with only 7/8 of an ounce. It's a lot of difference. It's a lot of pellet to count difference. Number 2s, when you consider pellet count by shot weight, when you consider it's 1 ounce is only about 130 or so pellets, maybe a little bit less than that, knowing that 1 1/4 ounce is typically around 156 to 160, 65 pellets, somewhere in that range of 10 there, 9 or 10 there. 7/8 of an ounce, 7/8 of 130, let's say. That's getting down there. You're getting down towards only about the 100 pellet count. It's a big difference, guys, considering that steel is so light. 7/8 of an ounce is a big difference. It is what it is. I honestly can tell you that with number 2s, if I was taking this 20 gauge out and only had these loads available to me, even with, I think, an improved modified or a full choke, I don't see this getting much better. Constricting in this small of a bore, this large of a pellet, generally is not going to help you out as far as pattern density. Fairly nice spread on this, though. So I would say that this load, all 3 of them, I would top out at about 25 yards with the modified choke. Yes, you could football punt a couple birds here and there at close range, but you can do that with a 12 gauge with a modified in anyhow. I guess just not trying to knock them in the head. Really, it's kind of inconclusive. 15 yards, they all look great and well, definitely deadly. So we're going to assume that 20 and 25 are looking okay too. It's that extra 5 yards out to 30 that we're really getting some dispersion. I think what we're going to do here is we're going to throw up another target and we're going to take a look at what number 4 shot looks like at 30 yards and compare and see if maybe that, or even a number 3 shot size, if you can find a 20 gauge loading offered in it, might work out better for you. So let's take a look at the number 4s at 30 yards. So unfortunately there, guys, looks like we got a little sparse on the center of our pattern, but we got a lot more pellet count now, so we're doing a bit better. Honestly, you could still have a dead duck out of this, I think, at around 30 yards, a little bit less than absolutely. I know this load, and this was a Kent, same exact loading as the number 2s that were just fired, but it is in number 4 shot size. I have seen my wife take teal with this. I know it is perfectly capable of hitting those smaller birds out to about 20 yards, but I have not seen or done it myself to kill a bird past that with a 20 gauge. In fact, I've never killed a bird with a 20 gauge. My wife is the only one who has in our family. As far as waterfowl go, I've taken several doves with her shotgun, and of course use a 16 gauge for a number of different things. Unfortunately not waterfowl, so I'm used to smaller bores in a way from 12s, but you know, the small bores are attractive, they're lightweight, they're efficient, but man, you know, for pellet sizes that you're going to want to use for regular waterfowl season, the 20 gauge might not be an optimal choice for shooting birds past 25 yards. And a lot of guys typically shoot their birds at 15 to 30, most a little bit farther than 20. So if they're getting right in on top of you, if you're confident, if you want to use a smaller bore, have a bit more of a challenge, the 20 gauge is obviously going to be a great choice for you. So let's wrap this up with testing out some reliability of the different shells we're trying today, and all we're going to look for is will it run 3 times in a row with each loading? Let's find out. All right, boys and girls, let's check for reliability. Let's go in the same order that we did with the pattern testing. We're going to start off with the Winchesters. Again, these ones are all 7/8 of an ounce. They're all number 2s. And the Winchesters are advertised at 1,500 feet per second. So me sitting in a semi-kneeling / seated position will give you a little bit of idea of how stiff the recoil is against me. It is a 20 gauge, so it's sharp, but it's not anything terrible. So I'm just going to put these 3 down range. We'll move to the hevi-steel, and finally the Kents. We're just looking to see if it'll get through 3 rounds. All 3, really good ejection. little smoky, smells like a Winchester shell. All right, heavy steel. Same exact loading, 100 feet per second slower. It's clocked out at 1400 according to the box it came in. A little bit milder, but still punching that cheek. That's one thing I don't like about a light 20 gauge like this. Really good, consistent ejection. Like that one. And finally the Kent's. And this gun has choked on Federal and Kent's before. Unfortunately, I don't have any Federals hanging around to test. But this one's boxed at 1550. So let's see what it does. Now remember my comments about Kent hulls and us having the one nearly split and the one completely split hull just from firing. So we're gonna have to take a look at these and see what happens. Definitely the worst of all three for recoil. This is a light little gun. It's sub 6.5 pounds. I think it clocks out at like 5.9 or 6 even. Really light gun, something I'm not quite used to, but this comb is kind of sharp for me, and it does beat on your face a little bit when you get into those heavier loadings. But when you're shooting at a duck, you're definitely not going to notice it, and it's definitely a lot less push, just a little bit more sharper recoil than a 12 gauge. So they all ran perfectly. I know this gun has choked on Federals and Kents before. Maybe that was because it needed to break in. Can't say, but today it's worked fine. And I don't really feel like wasting a bunch of good duck ammo that I've got saved up for my wife for her 20 gauge in case she wants to take it out. So maybe we'll do that another time if I find some more, see how many we can run through this baby. Anyways, guys, not really a conclusive video as far as testing goes. Saw some different data points there. Take it as you will. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you like seeing more videos like this, hit subscribe. And if you want to see all of my videos, make sure you hit that notification bell. It'll make sure you get an email, get a pop-up message on your app if you watch YouTube on your phone, etc., etc. I've done it with some of the subscriptions I really like to take a look at every time they upload something. So if you want to keep up to date and see all of my videos, make sure you hit that bell. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed. God bless. Keep your powder dry. I'll see you in the next video.